Muslim leaders in Quebec brush off Trudeau. This is the Great White North Report.
I'm in love with the system. Never going home. I'm in love.
Welcome back to the channel. Going through the CBC and seeing what interests me. And this one popped up. Seems that Trudeau wanted to have a meeting with Muslim leaders in Quebec because there is going to be a by-election soon. And that will be another bellwether test to see if Trudeau has a chance of winning the next election or not. So we went to this area in Montreal, and I guess it has a very large Muslim population because he invited the Muslim leaders to speak to him at an event. And apparently the meeting was called off after many refused to attend. So many Muslim leaders have attacked the government over its stance on the war in Gaza. Why are so many Muslims in Canada rallying to Gaza when many Muslim countries do not want the people in Gaza? Egypt did not open their borders to allow the Gazans entrance into their country. The Jordanians do not want them. The Saudis do not want them. Even the Lebanese with Hezbollah at the helm do not want them. No one wants these people. But over here, many of our people are supporting them, and I don't understand why. There's a reason why no one in the surrounding area wants these people and they're always looking for us to help them. You know, we have 2 million there's 2 million Uyghur Muslims being held by China in concentration camps or labor camps, forced labor camps in Xinjiang, province of China, under the CCP. But I don't hear these Muslim groups going off against China and demanding government action. Why? Because it's the Jewish state of Israel that is doing it. And for some reason, Muslims just get wound up when anything happens with the Jews, with the Israelis. They just get so uptight and wound up. And it just drives them irrationally around the bend. I think jealousy has a lot to play because the Israelis, when they founded their country, with UN approval basically, the 48 partition plan, the Israelis announced their country. And they not only defeated all their Arab neighbors, they also conquered some of the lands that were to go to the Arabs in the British Palestinian Mandate, which included both an Israeli state and an Arab state. There were no people called Palestinians. You can still find today some Israelis that were born and have a Palestinian passport from the 1940s. It's the Arabs that hijacked the name. They rejected the name at first. They have now accepted it since the 1980s as a political move. So I think many of these Muslims are jealous and irrational because Israel won their war, created an independent state, and they've been a flourishing state ever since, while all their Arab neighbors have gone down the toilet in some form or another. Even the Saudis, yes, the Saudis are rich only because of oil. It's the only reason they're rich. So there's going to be a meeting between Muslim leaders in Quebec and Prime Minister Trudeau planned for this afternoon north of Montreal, weeks ahead of a critical by-election in the city. So it's a political event, a political thing by Trudeau trying to drum up support for the by-election. Because Trudeau's popularity has waned drastically. And he needs to see if he wins this by-election, that will be seen as that he can still maybe win the next election. If he loses this by-election, the Liberal Party might try and oust him. Be interesting to see. However, the event was cancelled after many of those invited refused to attend. The National Council of Canadian Muslims said that many members in our community continue to feel angry and frustrated with a government that is, in their view, simply hasn't operated with integrity in relation to what is happening in Gaza or in addressing this steep rise of Islamophobia in Canada. Really, we had father and son arrested for terrorism. They were going to start killing people in Toronto. You wonder why Islamophobia. I will go right now on record as saying I'm not against Muslims in particular, individually, but I am against Islam. For me, it's not Islamophobia because I've actually researched and read, did my homework, my due diligence, and what I find in Islam is not compatible with Judeo-Christian and Western thinking. It would have been better if we did not allow that into Canada. But it's too late. We got it here, and I've called for a reform This National Council of Canadian Muslims should not be worrying about politics. They should be worrying about reforming their own religion. And they're so worried about Gaza. Have we not given so much of our taxpayer money to Gaza? And where does that money go? It goes right into Hamas. Right into the terrorist organization that is banned in Canada. The pro-Hamas protests that have been on our streets and on our campuses. That is what we brought. We brought over a very anti-Semitic, anti-feminist, and anti-LGBTQ people to our country. And it's funny how all Muslims are against Israel at this point. I have not seen a single Muslim leader step up and say, yeah, Israel has the right to defend itself, and this is a just war. What do you expect Israel to do after Hamas went on a rampage, started killing innocent civilians outside the Gazan borders into Israel proper? What do you expect? You expect Israel was going to sit down and take it? And then Hamas took so many hostages, including dead bodies. They use dead bodies as bargaining chips. That's how sick they are. Because Hamas knows that even a dead Israeli is worth more than several live Gazans to the Israelis. And it's true. So these invitations were issued verbally by the office of El-Khoury, the MP for Laval, did these, according to two members of the Quebec Muslim community who spoke to the CBC. Guests were asked to go to the Chateau Royal, a reception hall in Laval, Quebec, and to expect to meet Trudeau at 3 p.m. Wednesday afternoon. After many of those invited chose not to go, pro-Hamas protesters showed up in the front of the hall instead. So obviously, somebody tipped off these pro-Hamas protesters to go there. Laval police were called to the scene and managed to disperse the crowd, which was peaceful. Yeah, it could have got ugly if Trudeau actually showed his head. Police confirmed a meeting with Trudeau that was to take place at the hall had been cancelled and informed the protesters. That's why they left. So the Prime Minister's office has stated that Trudeau has always been and remains committed to difficult and important conversations on the ongoing crisis in the Middle East. He doesn't have a bone to throw in that arena. The only thing Canada can do is throw more money or take money away. And I'm all for taking money away from the Gazans. Why would I want to send my hard-earned money over to a people who cannot seem to get it through their heads, to build something great instead of wasting it in an endless cycle of violence? The Israelis want nothing to do with the Gazans. They just want to make sure they don't start throwing rockets again at them and breaking through the border and killing people. It's called a border for a reason. The Muslim Council of Canada should be calling out Hamas. Why would you want that? Is that what you want for Canada? And Hamas-type institutions here? I'd love to hear from Muslims and see what they really want. Do they want to bring Hamas here? Is that what they want from this country? Is that what they want Canada to support? A murdering terrorist group? The Israelis don't murder people out of nowhere. They try hard as hell to get civilians out of the way and go after the militants. Unfortunately, the militants hide behind the civilian population or underneath it, and the Israelis are having to dig them out continuously. So one imam who was invited to the Laval meeting but did not plan to attend called the event a charm operation directed at the Muslim community. Obviously, Trudeau was losing the Muslim vote, which helped get him in power in the first place and helped keep him in power. You think Muslims are going to vote for Poilievre and the Conservatives? No. The Muslims, even though the Muslims are very conservative people as a whole, they will not vote for the Conservatives simply because they consider the Conservatives to be the party of Western values. Muslim community is very upset at what is happening in Gaza. Well, then call out Hamas. Simple. By stop funding Hamas, cut them at their knees where they can no longer function, and put something else in Gaza. Make something better. Can you imagine if Canada had decided to do that in the United States, going on a rampage through Buffalo to Detroit? What do you think the U.S. would have done to us? After all, Canada technically could claim parts of the U.S. territories. The whole Alaskan Panhandle, or the northwest border between BC and the United States. There was once a time where the British claimed all the way down to Portland, Oregon. And there was that 54-40-year fight that the United States has. There's also New Brunswick with Maine. So we've had border disputes with the United States, which we settled peacefully. We didn't resort to too much violence. There was a bit of violence. I remember some loggers were fighting along the New Brunswick Maine border, and there was also tensions in Oregon territory, but they were more or less done peacefully. But think if we had done that to the United States, try to reinforce our claims along the Maine border, along the BC border, or up in the Alaskan Panhandle, what would happen? So this was a charm offensive to get the Muslim voters back on the Liberal bandwagon. Where are they going to go now? NDP? The NDP will give them more stuff, money, free money, but raise your taxes to go with it. So the NDP and Bloc Québécois say they are competitive in the riding. It doesn't say Conservatives because Muslims aren't going to vote for the Conservatives. And I think Trudeau, with his waffling over the whole Middle East debate, has lost the Muslim vote and the Jewish vote. The Muslim vote is bigger in Canada than the Jewish vote, so he's trying to charm the Muslims back to his side. It's not going to work. This isn't 2015 all over again. I don't like what the Muslim community in Canada is doing in regards to Gaza, how they're not calling out Hamas. And they're focusing solely on what Israeli does, or how many people Israeli supposedly kills. Remember, the Gazan Health Ministry does not distinguish between militants and civilians. Civilians are in the way. No one wants to take them, even temporarily. And we've taken too many of these idiots already. Look at what's happening. And why this hatred for the Jews in Canada, who've done nothing? Because why? Because they support Israel? Yeah, most of them do. The majority of them do. There's a few odd Jewish nuts that don't. And the whole Muslim community supports the Gazans. Why? Because they're Muslims. That's it. The only reason. All you have to do is go to the Quran and see where their hatred of Jews comes from. You either read through the Ibn Kathir Quran, the Ma'arif al-Quran, or the Tazkir al-Quran. This is just an example from Quran.com. The crimes of the Jews. The sins that are mentioned here are many sins that the Jews committed, which caused them to be cursed and removed away from the right guidance. The Jews broke the promises and vows that Allah took from them, and also rejected Allah's ayat, meaning his signs and proofs and miracles they witnessed at the hands of their prophets, Allah said. Really, most of the prophets are Jewish. Moses, Joseph, Abraham, Daniel, they're all through the Old Testament. The one they didn't accept, the one that wasn't widely accepted was Jesus. Many Jews did accept Jesus. Jesus was Jewish, and the earliest disciples and followers were Jewish. It was a Jewish movement. Christianity started as. But then after the expulsion of the Jews from Jerusalem, Christianity among the Jews faded, and it became more of a non-Jewish thing. And they're killing the prophets because there are many crimes and offenses against the prophets of Allah, for they killed many prophets. May Allah's peace be upon them, they're saying. So this is a tafsir of what Allah was saying. But this is the evil accusation of Jews uttered against Maryam and their claim that they killed Isa. So, got to understand, Muslims don't believe that Jesus died on the cross. They think they put someone else, the Romans put someone else up there and Jesus survived. Not sure how that works. How Muslims can believe that when there's well over 700 years after the event. Because this is something that was introduced by Abdul Malik, an Umayyan caliph around the beginning of the 8th century, who started out as a Unitarian Christian, and then he rejected the Trinitarians, and then started forming his own little state religion. So this is where they get the idea. It's all in their Quran and their Hadiths and their tafsirs. And you can go to the violence against Jews. Now, Muslims will say they're a peaceful people, but they have what's called abrogation. There are many violent verses and there's many peaceful verses. The peaceful verses came first. I'm going by the standard Islamic narrative, which is totally false anyway. There's many holes in that narrative. But the standard Islamic narrative said that when Muhammad went to Medina, got more power, he became more violent, basically. And his violent verses abrogate the peaceful verses. So the sword verses and the peace verses. So it said they claimed that Muhammad was peaceful at the start and then became more aggressive. So now you have a problem, the doctrine of abrogation, which should be revoked. And I would scrub all the violent verses away from the Quran. Because this is what the violent verses are, the ones that Muslims look to. 25% of them. So I think it's dangerous to bring Islam into Canada. And unfortunately, we have it here already. It's growing. And we're going to have to deal with it just like Britain is right now. But as far as Trudeau goes, if he loses his by-election, I think he's going to have to step down. And the Liberals are going to have to find someone else. Because if he keeps losing these by-elections before the next federal election in a year, it's not going to look good for the Liberals. They know that. And they'll be scrambling to find his replacement. Chrystia Freeland is too closely tied to Trudeau, so I don't think even she has hope in hell. She'll be the next Kim Campbell. But it's interesting that Trudeau is trying to play both sides of the fence. And then he waffles on every side of the issue. I can tell you right now, outside the Muslim community, the majority of Canadians probably support Israel. What we're seeing in the protests are the fringe movements. The leftist fringe movements that will support any hopeless cause they can find. But anyway, Canadians out there, let me know what you guys think about Trudeau meeting with Muslim leaders and how they're trying to pressure us into labeling Israel as an aggressor in a war that Hamas started. Leave comments in the comment section. Until next time, this has been the Great White North Report.
I'm in love.